Alright guys, what's up? It's Jack and welcome back to another video, and today's video was actually inspired by a visitor on stream. So we were talking about Call of Duty and I was playing and streaming arguably the cheesiest Call of Duty of all time, also known as Black Ops 4, and the convo actually ended up switching to Black Ops 3. And I was kind of inspired to play it and on stream, and it wasn't installed, so I actually had to take about half an hour or so to install it and to get the multiplayer in, and within minutes I was back in it after all this time and after all these years. And another viewer came into the room, and upon seeing the stream they left only one message, and they said that Black Ops 3 is the greatest COD of all time. Now, whether or not you believe that to be true is obviously subjective, right? But ultimately, there's no denying that Black Ops 3 was special, and for a multitude of reasons as well. So now, there's no doubt that the game certainly had its issues, but issues aside, Black Ops 3 was a great Call of Duty game, and for many reasons. So sit back and relax, and while I take you back on a trip down memory lane to the very beginning to discuss Call of Duty Black Ops 3, specifically the multiplayer. Now, after Advanced Warfare had released its game, the entire community of COD players had been waiting 3 long years since the previous Treyarch title, which was Black Ops 2. And Black Ops 2 was the last gold standard game of its time in many aspects, which made waiting for the next installment by Treyarch that much more difficult, but made fans and content creators alike speculate about the upcoming title, especially since the game had incredible shoes to fill from the standard that Black Ops 2 would leave behind. So, when the time had finally come, it was E3 of 2015, and the game would finally be unveiled by Treyarch. The campaign took about 7 minutes of the 10 minutes of presentation time, which is a lot by E3 standards. And then the time had finally come. I remember being at home and watching from stream and treating it like a special event, as I always did. I had just started actually my channel in 2015 of April, so here on YouTube, and when David Vonderhaar had finally appeared on stage, I was hyped, and I remember saying, okay, here we go. One thing about Vaughn that I liked was that he introduced the game before the trailer hit. He mentioned how privileged that he felt being up there to represent the hardworking men and women of Treyarch. This would also be the first time where we would officially see multiplayer footage in the form of gameplay trailer. This would also be the first time that the franchise would get its first priority on PlayStation. And when the amazing trailer ended, we would also learn that there would be a multiplayer beta, which was at the time a first for the franchise and the franchise's players. And everyone is hyped and yet skeptical because for the first time, we would have super moves similar to what Destiny has in its multiplayer, or also known as the Crucible. And yes, we were all skeptical. However, the more interviews and coverage and info about the multiplayer details were answered, we would eagerly await for the beta in August. One of the first things that you would notice about the game is that it's actually very clean, and the graphics are pretty crisp, and the colors are actually very vibrant. This is a Treyarch game, but it looks a little bit different. And even though it retains its Treyarch DNA in other ways besides just, looking at the director when it comes to Black Ops 1 and 2, it would actually not direct Black Ops 3. But all other players in Treyarch were still there, and Vonderhaar was the face of the community, and they all trust him and relied on him, especially after the success of the previous game. So the community awaited for the beta day to arrive and to get our hands with the game finally. And it would be a very meaningful time for Vaughn and for content creators and streamers, because they were all over it and everyone had loved it, and people's worries about the specialists were actually lessened significantly, since the game's main focus was about the gun-on-gun gameplay. The advanced movement would also take a nerf when compared to Advanced Warfare, and it allowed players to play boots on the ground and still succeed, and the advanced movement would be there to enhance the in-between gunfights moments, but the skilled player would still be able to combine the two. However, with the cost, because of the design of the game, it would be a risk when you would wall run, for instance, or do some sort of advanced trickery while shooting at a target. Treyarch managed to combine these elements very well, and overall the community embraced the gameplay. It was an absolute blast not only playing the beta and watching it, but to know and feel that it would be another solid year for Call of Duty was truly a joyous time. especially since Treyarch would succeed in making a sequel worthy of its predecessor, which is no easy task. So let's get into the juicy details about Black Ops 3's multiplayer, so that way we can look deeper and identify why and how Black Ops 3 is one of the greatest COD games of all time. So upon playing the game for the first time, there was no doubt that playing the full version of your favorite multiplayer franchise by your favorite developer for that franchise has a unique feel to it, especially after getting back home from the midnight release, which back then, digital downloads would not be as popular as they are these days, but they were happening, but people still went to those midnight releases to get their game, then drive home really fast to install it and play it for the first time, and either call off of work, or oversleep and get into trouble when going back into work, or schedule vacation ahead of time for that event specifically. And for me, one of my favorite rituals was to get some takeout ahead of time and either eat before or during playing in between matches, or all of the above. It would be either Five Guys, Chinese, pizza, or something of that nature, and that I would indulge in on this special day, and it really never disappointed. One of the things about Black Ops 3 that instantly got my attention and that would always brings back the feeling of playing the game for the first time is the menu music. Black Ops is my favorite menu music, Black Ops 1, but Black Ops 3 takes a close second. I liked it that it was different than Black Ops 2, and that it actually fit in the tone and everything else that was Black Ops 3. Campaign fans would end up indulging in the story until complete before finally allowing themselves to sleep. Zombies fans would try to find every Easter egg in the Zombies map while trying to survive as many rounds as possible, and multiplayer fans would see how much they can unlock and to what level they would get before falling asleep. The race to be the first in the world to reach maximum prestige was still a thing, and players both on and off YouTube would play to reach max prestige before everyone else. Players would share the same account and would rotate shifts, with lots of teams having 4 players, but there would also be other teams of creators consisting of 3 or even 2 players. Some players did it solo as well, but depriving themselves of a full 8 hours of sleep and lessening it to get there. Content creators would make first impressions videos and the Road to Commander type of videos as well, and streamers would, whether or not they participated in the race or not, would stream and play the game as they normally did. It's a shame that the race never was an official thing, and that the devs or Activision never really took advantage of it, but players took it upon themselves to get things up, organized as best they could, but they would have mixed results due to the lack of communication, or should I say miscommunication. The game would feature all the bare essentials of every Call of Duty multiplayer title, such as all the game modes that they could expect and new and returning features as well, such as the combat record or the paint shop for your weapons. The Pick-10 system would make a return, but slightly improved, with scopes and reticles being their own category instead of being part of the attachments category. And everything else that was Pick-10 in terms of the rules and limitations would be there from the previous game in terms of the Pick-10 class in and of itself. Players would not be happy about the toughness perk not being in the game, but Treyarch, after the beta and some feedback following release, managed to strike a balance with the weapon flinch. There would be returning perks such as lightweight that would allow you to sprint faster, and there would be new perks such as Afterburner, which would allow the player to use their advanced movement more often, as opposed to everyone just having that kind of level by default. There was cleverness to this because it was an option for players to use it more if desired, but it came at a cost in their create a class slot. Weapons would also have a familiar feel to them in terms of what we saw in the previous Black Ops title, and this one was no exception. So weapons would have a similar look and feel to them in similar ways like the previous title, but slightly different though in terms of the game, and alterations from their older iterations as well as how they played in comparison to the prequel. So what does this mean? Well, although some weapons were similar if not identical. For instance, the ICR assault rifle in Black Ops was similar to the M27 in Black Ops 3 was similar to the M27 of Black Ops 2. The M8A1 was similar if not identical to the M8A7, the Vesper was similar to the Scorpion, the Pharaoh was similar to the Chicom, and the Weevil was similar to the PDW, the VMP was similar to the MP7, and so on and so forth. Any subtle or major changes to the weapons would give them a fresh feel, as well as look in terms of the appearance and even the weapon design and the iron sights. Attachments would work like you expect them to, but this would also have its fair share of changes as well. there were certain attachments in the previous game that would not be used at all or hardly be used, either due to there hardly being any difference in performance, such as the grips in Black Ops 2, which would change in Black Ops 3, and rapid fire, which hardly got used in Black Ops 2 due to the fact that it would make submachine guns recoil so much that they weren't worth using. I'm sure that through data, Treyarch noticed this and made the necessary changes. Of course, like any other Call of Duty game, not every single change would be met with praise, like the sniper's aim assist being reduced, making it significantly more difficult for quick scope. But that was the same with every game, and in every COD game there would always be something that is either nerfed or buffed that players wouldn't agree with. But the majority of changes overall, though, were welcomed by the majority of the players. And as a developer, it's what you strive to achieve: to make as many players as you can happy as possible. You can't make them all happy, but you can get most of them. The maps were also great in the game, and they certainly retain that Treyarch look and feel, and the 3-lane design which support multiple playstyles and yet encourage movement and objective play for objective-based game modes. And just like Black Ops 2, the vast majority of the maps are good maps, and there are a few that were bad as well, and then there were a few that I call legendary S-tier maps that were also worthy of making a return to any Treyarch title that would come after. I'm sure you're wondering which maps I consider legendary S-tier maps in the game, so here they are for those of you guys who haven't watched my Black Ops 3 map tiers list video. And they are, in no particular order, Combine, Fringe, Stronghold, Infection, and Evac. Those are the S-tier legendary maps. And the lowest tier maps for the game are Metro and Exodus. And every other map in the game was a solid A in my eyes. And we're not talking about looks in terms of the maps, because all the maps in this game are absolutely eye candy and gorgeous and vibrant. We're talking gameplay and design in terms of the layout and flow of the maps. Making great maps is something that is actually easier said than done, because you have to design multiple good maps within your game, and then after a while and after multiple games, it becomes hard to create a new layout which would work. So from that aspect, Treyarch deserves praise and for this accomplishment, and even the lower tier maps like Metro and Exodus, for instance, are high tier maps in comparison to what we get these days with recent Call of Duty titles, in my opinion. So that's saying something. I'm sure a lot of players would pick Metro and Exodus any day over maps like Piccadilly or Asshair Cave, to name a few. So anyway, let's keep the flow going and move on to something that I feel is a little bit overlooked in Black Ops 3, and that's the time to kill, or TTK. The TTK in Black Ops 3 is extremely exceptional for a game of a health of 100. If you were to reduce Black Ops 4's time to kill from 150 to 120 or 125, you would have Black Ops 3's time to kill, if 100 was Black Ops 2. So in other words, the time to kill was somewhere in between Black Ops 2 and Black Ops 4, which also makes sense in a numerical standpoint since we're talking about Black Ops 3, and since it's the number in the middle. But its 100 health time to kill feels just a tad longer than Black Ops 2's in the majority of cases. Sure, some weapons are absolute melt machines, but the same is true for any COD. But the time to kill and hit detection overall, with my experience, especially on the PS4, was a great one, and I admire Treyarch for the vast improvement in hit detection in their games, especially when you consider Black Ops 1 hit detection, then a few inconsistencies in Black Ops 2, but overall better. And then in Black Ops 3, it was their best yet at the time, and actually a weakness of a game that was now ironed out and improved greatly from my experience. So now if you play on Xbox, your experience may be a bit different, since the PS4 would be priority number one, and I have experienced both, and it is true. And even the subtle differences of this department would be felt by the experienced COD player. So now let's talk about the streaks, which is another main pillar of a Call of Duty game. Similar to weapons, similar streaks from Black Ops 2 would make a return in this game, but yet would be different. One of the things that makes a streak great is how useful it is, as well as what it's supposed to do. So in other words, if an attack helicopter doesn't get you more than 2 or 3 kills at best, then it's a bad streak, especially if it requires 8 or 9 or even more kills, or 8 or 9 or even more points to obtain. And the more points a streak costs, the more of an impact it should have in the game depending on what the streak itself is supposed to do. The non-lethal, such as the UAV, the counter UAV, and the Hater, for example, act like you would expect them to and remain unchanged from previous iterations of the Black Ops franchise. Other streaks like the Hellstorm missile and the Lightning Strike would make the return from Black Ops 2, but slightly changed to give them a bit of a different feel. The Lightning Strike could have used a bit of a buff in terms of the radius of the strikes due to the pacing and advanced movement of the game, but it's here and not as useful as it was in Black Ops 2, but perhaps on purpose, due to it being very useful in Black Ops 2. The Hellstorm missile was slightly improved in terms of tracking and locking targets, but was overall more or less the same. And again, like the weapons, the Cerberus was like the AGR, the Raps were like the Dogs, and the Mothership was like a gunship or a chopper gunner hybrid like streak that was nerfed from pre-beta according to Drifter. And apparently when content creators were invited to play the game at Treyarch, which was a pre-alpha build, Ali A was able to get the Mothership and literally fucked everybody up with it so bad that Treyarch must have taken notes and nerfed it since then. The Guardian and Sentry Gun would also make a return as well. Again, if something isn't broken, why fix it? This is also part of the philosophy that Treyarch would put into work, but this did it in a way to where players really didn't have any complaints. And to my surprise, because you know how the community is, but even though all the streaks were not quite legendary as Black Ops 2, they were still very solid, and after a few patches here and there, they worked just as intended. And if Black Ops 2 streaks were S tier, then Black Ops 3's tier streaks were about an A. They were solid, but they didn't get into the crazy realm that Black Ops 2 streaks did, which is a reason why the Lodestar probably never made a return, I assume, as well as the Swarm itself. And to this day, we have not seen any streak quite like the Swarm. If there was any streak that made me go, oh shit, when I heard the announcer say, warning, hostile Swarm inbound, and the other one being a hospital orbital VSAT inbound. To this day, no other lethal or non-lethal score streak made you go, holy shit, quite like those two, and if it was against you, as well as the feeling that you would get when you would get one of these, especially when you managed to get both in the same life. And as far as the Swarm goes, we have not seen it since, and perhaps this is the reason why. So those are most of the score streaks in Black Ops 3, and they do not disappoint overall. So by now, you might have noticed that a pattern is forming when it comes to Black Ops 3, which basically says that they wanted to bring back aspects of Black Ops 2 that made it great and expand them within reason, and while trying to avoid it from going too crazy within them. And in more ways often than not, Treyarch's actually succeeded. And the amazing thing about this game is that it even managed to bring back players that were not too crazy about Black Ops 2, which is surprising, but at the same time, when you think about the Call of Duty community, it's just as easy to lose a fan of a particular game as it is to gain one for literally almost any reason, no matter how big or small. Plus, there was advanced movement in the game, and yet people who wanted no part of Advanced Warfare came back and embraced this game throughout its life cycle. Now, I don't know about you guys, but that's a great accomplishment, and there was no other advanced movement Call of Duty that would be received as well from the community, and the fact that there was a significant number of players that would consider this game superior to Black Ops 2 overall. And there was also a significant number of players who would say that even if this game overall is not superior to Black Ops 2, there would be also aspects of this game of Black Ops 3 that would be better than they were in Black Ops 2, which makes for an interesting conversation in and of itself actually. So in conclusion, Black Ops 3 was a game that fans were hoping would be great after the legendary Black Ops 2, and their hopes actually came true, and people love this game and still love it to this day, which coincidentally brings us to today. The gameplay you're seeing is very recent, and after all these years since the game came out, and after all of these years of not playing it, returning to it, despite a few noticeable problems like cheaters here and there, which is not the game's fault, is still a fun game to play overall that feels just as good as it did all those years ago. And I was quickly reminded of the reasons why I loved this game so much. I made it to level 1000 in this game on Xbox, and I'm a Prestige 2 or 3 or something here on the PS4. And I'm not kidding when I say that I'm considering doing a live streams of playing this game and trying to reach the highest level possible until XDefiant releases. And about a week or so before XDefiant does release, I'm thinking of disabling the aim assist in this game for that week before to further prepare myself for XDefiant, because when playing these types of games recently, I may not be quite where I used to be in terms of ability, but my aim is still there, and I feel like it's even better than it was before. So I at least have that, and for me, there's just something about being accurate, legitimately accurate, as one can possibly be, that is very appealing to me no matter what shooter you play. To me, it's the equivalent of having a great jump shot in basketball. And the only way to obtain it, to truly obtain it, is to earn it and practice it, especially in XDefiant, which makes it even more appealing to me for that reason alone, as well as due to the fact that aiming will actually take skill, that controller players will once again be respected for having good aim instead of aim assist doing more and more of the work for them every year like they have in recent Call of Duty titles, and a few other genre of first-person shooters. And I do not know that even in the beginning of disabling the aim assist of this game when the time comes, and I do know that it will be a struggle, and in time it would be better, and it would get me reached to another level, not just in XDefiant, but in any shooter in general. And I kind of want to be that ambassador for that sort of thing, so to speak, with a game that is worthy of it. And XDefiant is that game from the looks of it so far. And I think I'll tweet at Mark Rubin asking him to please not increase the aim assist from what we got from beta. But I would, however, ask him to make it work more consistently, because there were times when it certainly didn't. So overall, those are my thoughts on Black Ops 3. And not only was it a pleasure to play the game during its life cycle, it's still a pleasure to play today in the year 2023. And let me know what you think down in the comments section, and let me know what you think of the game and everything and anything else mentioned here. And thank you very much for watching and taking the time to watch and or listen, and I'll catch you guys on the next one.